Welcome back to the Off Cycle, and continuing on with our vintage Runabout restoration and rebuild. I've got the engine pulled off. The engine is all done. It is up for sale currently on a little engine mount that I made. It's in the garage. All the wiring is finally out. The controls are out. I just took all the trim off the outside of the boat, the rub rail and the base of the rub rail, and I'm about to start taking out the rivets for the two halves. I've decided that I'm going to try to take the top half and the bottom half, try to separate them, and should make it a lot easier to do the transom and inspect the transom. There's really, the way the top half kind of comes over the top near the transom, it's gonna be really difficult to get in behind there and cut the transom out and all that. So if I can split this boat into two, it's gonna make things a lot easier for me. So I'll give you an update on what I've got going on with that. So like I said, I've got the motor finally off, all the controls out. The rack and pinion cable is still in here. I got to take that out, but that system's still good. The steering cable and everything is free. Just need to really clean it up and whatnot, but it doesn't even need to be lubricated. It's nice and smooth, so that's great. I haven't done anything with the stringers yet, cleaning out, because we've been getting rain every day, and actually forecasted to rain till all the way through the 30th, through the end of the month. So like over a week straight, we have like 60% chance of rain. So I don't think I'm gonna be doing any fiberglass work anytime soon, more than cutting stuff out. So, but the way this transom, the top cap on this transom is, it comes in like halfway here through the transom. So it's gonna be very difficult to deal with this transom and work around it. So I'm gonna try to start sanding some of this down and figure out where the seam is back here. If it's just completely glass, I'm gonna have to cut a seam, but this is gonna be very difficult to work up underneath there and cut the transom out and all that. So if I can get this boat separated into a top half and a bottom half, it's gonna be much easier. So I've already taken off the actual rub rail. This is all the rub rail here. It was just riveted on. And now I've got rivets that are holding, here we go, rivets that are holding the actual two halves together about every 12 inches, 10 to 12 inches or something like that. But the way I do rivets, I know a lot of people just use a drill bit and drill them out, but oftentimes I find that they start spinning. So what I do is actually use a countersink, because that you're able to put pressure on it and keep it from spinning as it turns, and it just pops off once you have a little ring pop off onto the countersink bit, just like this. Then you know you're through, and then I just take a punch and just punch the rivet in with a punch. So the whole thing is so old. There was a couple of them that were really loose, and I didn't have any of them that were just started spinning and became a problem. So I prefer doing that versus the drill bit. And you can see under here, this is the original color of the boat, this green color, which is kind of interesting. I was thinking that it was just green bottom paint, but it looks like somebody maybe taped off. It was all green, and somebody taped it off and painted the sides white and left the bottom green. And I'm wondering too, like, if that's the water line, this boat sits awfully low in the water. So I don't know if that's just that motor was a lot for this boat, or a lot of big fuel tank back there, but I'm really curious as to what the water line is on this boat, because that seems very deep. You know, normally you'd maybe 2 inches or so, if that, of water line. So I'm kind of curious the first time I get this boat in the water, what the actual water line is going to be. I may actually tow it down and put it in the water just to see how it floats. But there's no holes in it, so I know it does float. That is our next step. Is going to be taking the rest of take the bow light, that cleat, the windshield, and those two back cleats off. I might wait to do those until I have the top cap off, to have something to grab a hold of, or if I need to use a cherry picker, I have something to grab a hold of. So I may leave these. And then it's going to be easier for me to cut the back of this dash out and refiberglass that dash with this top half off. I can just flip it upside down. I'm not sure yet what I'm going to do about, I really kind of want to take all this interior aluminum trim off too, so I don't have to sand around it and all that. So I'll probably go through and go ahead and drill out all that stuff as well. I'll have to get some really small rivets to put it back on, but I like the idea of this. I could just be lazy and get some of that vinyl edging to go around here, but I like the aluminum. I'd like to try to keep it original if I can. It's pretty good shape. Just wet sand it down and make it nice brushed color and reuse it. But that's where we're at so far. So as I thought, this is a piece of solid oak right here. Looks like somebody just glassed this in on top of an already what was probably a soft transom, just in an effort to you know, support a transom that was soft and rotting out. So not a great idea. I mean, it held the motor, so I guess it worked for what it was intended to work for. But yeah, this whole thing this looks like 3 layers of plywood and then another 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch piece of oak on top of that. So this piece of oak is just glassed in right here. So I'm gonna try to undo these bolts. Now I understand. I was wondering what these bolts were for right here. There's 3 lag bolts. These lag bolts were just holding this panel into the existing rotting out plywood transom. So I'll back those out. I'll probably be able to pop this piece of oak right out. They may have done that to hold it in while they had resin in there to help laminate it, but I don't see any glass between that other than the original transom. So I've had to cut around here because all this has been glassed in, trying to basically find the seam for the top of the deck of the boat so I can separate these two. That's been the biggest issue, is finding where the seam is and getting rid of that so I can actually separate these two halves. So that's exactly what happened, is that piece of oak was just laminated to the existing transom that was probably soft to beefing it up, and then they did a really lousy job of glassing it in, which honestly, I don't think they used any mat at all. I think this is all just resined in there, because I was cutting this, I'm not really seeing, well, there is a little piece there, maybe 1 layer, and then they just gooped a bunch of resin on there. That's why it's all thick everywhere, super thick. All right, I've got the top half and the bottom half separated. These back corners here were really difficult. I had to reach up in the corners. When somebody had glassed in the transom, they had glassed over the seam in some areas. So I had to get up in there with a deburring tool on my die grinder deburring tool to cut the glass in the area of those seams and chunk out some of the harder to reach places. But it didn't take too long, and it's split now. So I'm gonna wait for some help to pop that top off and then block it up in the backyard behind the fence, so I can work on it. Be much easier for me. I'm gonna go ahead, since I have it split, this deck up here, somebody had, I think it was this hole or a series of these holes, like right in the corner of the core underneath here, and it busted it and it was absorbing water. So this part of the deck right here is much softer than everything else. So since I have this off and I can flip it upside down, I'm gonna go ahead and cut out and replace the deck up here. If I didn't have this cut off and upside down, I had to do it up underneath there, upside down, try to glass upside down, hold the board or whatever I'm gonna put in there. I probably would have just left it, but since I have it off, it's gonna be much more convenient and easier to do. I'm gonna go ahead and do the deck as well to make it nice and strong. Before I pop this off, I'm just got it propped up here so it's at a good working level for me to start grinding down all this old repair. You can see this right here, this is the repair fiberglass. You can see it's much darker. This is the original stuff here, and I'm not sure whether this The top deck of this was just primed and painted. It almost looks like filler primer and paint, not gel coat, so it's not a polyester bond. This is the old fiberglass here. It looks like the old fiberglass was just put right over top of the paint or the primer, so I'm really surprised there was even a decent bond at all. I mean, you did see delamination right here, which I thought might have been the whole crack, but it was just delamination of this, and that explains why, because it was just glassed right over primer. It wasn't taken down to the original glass, so really poor job of repair. So I'm continuing on with prepping this back surface while it's propped up here, make it easier for me. But right here is, you can see this is real soft. This is like a sealant right here, silicone or something like that. It even looks kind of clear, and you can tell somebody went ahead and fiberglassed right over top of this sealant. Had fiberglass in there. They just went ahead and dropped a little fiberglass right on top of it, because that's all the original splash well right there. Just sealant and fiberglass over top of it. What a nightmare. This is the kind of stuff that makes these kind of projects giant pain and take a lot longer than they should. I find myself, other than repairing just age and poor design, it's somebody else's shoddy workmanship is the biggest culprit of time investment. This is incredible. I've just went ahead and just stuck my pry bar underneath this stuff and I'm able to just pry it up. So all this fiberglass work was useless. It wasn't providing any structure or strength or anything. Nothing at all. Soft silicone. Fiberglass and right over top of it. There's original paint or gel coat, whatever it is. I'm not sure yet at this point, but it's the original surface there.